with Team Aggro, the winner in the elimination rounds.
And, right now there's going to be a huge premium on Dustin's ability to block and to kill things. His deck definitely the more powerful of the two. Some spot removal spells, which are really important in this kind of matchup, but sometimes this Multi-Reanimator deck fumbles around a little bit. Missing land drops, colored mana issues, can just be slow out of the gates, and if that's the case, Brian can really capitalize.
Well, we're going to see how things do break down right now as we are underway here in round number 15. A Temple of Bandit is how Dolan will start things. Then leave his top card on top. Taylor will take a draw. Courser of Crew fixes what he's found. He'll play an Opulent Palace, and it's a passing of the turn. Thunderbreak Regent is the draw for Dolan. He's got a Sylvan Caryatid.
And it looks like a turn 3 Thunderbreak Regent, some Stubborn Denials in hand.
And perhaps it was going to be a turn 3. Okay, it may still be.
Pretty solid hand.
Yeah, here's a Thought Siege. You see Crater's Claws, 2 copies of Thunderbreak Regent, Stubborn Denial, and a Wooded Foothills. So certainly not a hand to be unhappy about, that's for sure.
This is a really nice teamer hand here, but it shows some of the vulnerability of this deck, which is if Dustin takes a Thunderbreak Regent and then has a spot removal spell for the other one, Brian's hand really doesn't go anywhere until he draws another creature.
Dustin will take Thunderbreak Regent. So they just want to make sure the zones are clear here, where everything is at. Here's a forest. And we'll pass the turn. Dolan will draw. Copy of Sylvan Caryatid. Not a great draw there. There's Wooded Foothills.
It is part of the issue with the Teamer aggro deck is that there's a lot of cards in the deck that are somewhat predicated on having a 4-power creature in play. Crater's Claws is very powerful at finishing off the game once you've already hit. Stubborn Denial can be a very potent counterspell once you actually have a board. But until that point comes, those cards are not worth very much.
There is not a judge at your table. Please raise your hand and call for one now.
Thunderbreak Regent. Pass that turn. Over to Taylor. Picked up a copy of Tasker. Has Nurborg. Also has a Courser. Let's see if he has an answer to the Dragon. He does. It's a Hero's Downfall. He'll take 3 to kill it. Certainly worth it to get it off the table, though.
And now this is a big test for Brian. If he draws another 4-power creature here, he's still in good shape. If he misses, he's in trouble.
Wild Slash is a miss. Caryatid and just a passing of the turn. Taylor will draw. Copy of Caryatid of his own. Looks like he's going to play Courser, and he will. Let's see that top card. It's Whip of Erebos. Does he have land number 4? He does not. Remember, these Soul-type Reanimator decks do kind of like to cheat on lands a little bit.
Absolutely. I mean, they're playing with Wayfinder and mana creatures and so forth, and that is an incentive to cheat, but it does come up in spots like this.
Crater's Claws the draw. And Dolan just going to pass the turn back. Whip of Erebos will be the draw for Taylor. Let's see that top card. It's a copy of Mana Confluence.
I'm really surprised Brian did not take that opportunity to kill the Courser. I don't know what's going on with that Crater's Claws besides. I guess he doesn't want to put the shields down on Stubborn Denial, but letting Dustin hit a land drop for free there is really, really rough for Brian.
Like you, I am surprised in that situation. Here's Tassiger.
And the thing is that Dustin knows about the Stubborn Denial from that earlier Thoughtseize. So it's not like he's going to make some play where he taps out for some significant spell and you get to attack with Stubborn Denial.
And Brian will draw. It's a Shivan Reef. Well, I think he's basically forced to Crater's Claw something now.
I actually kind of think it's the other way around. I feel like the ship has sailed, and now he needs to hold on to these Crater's Claws and try to burn them out.
Fair enough. He's just going to pass the turn back.
So I disagree with the initial play.
Okay.
But now that he's made it, I would not Crater's Claws the Tassiger. Because his plan at this point is, hope he finds a 4-power creature, ideally Stormbreath Dragon, that he can protect with Stubborn Denial, and use that alongside his burn spells to kill Dustin.
All right.
You can't not kill the Courser and then kill the Tassiger the following turn. Once you commit to that line, the die's cast. You kind of just have to play it out the way that you've caused it to play out.
I wouldn't say that you can't kill the Tassiger. I definitely think that you can if you think that if you think that's your opponent's only threat and you're going to have plenty of time. I think you can kill the Tassiger. I understand what you're saying, But I don't think you should be under the belief that like you can't shift roles because of a mistake that you made.
Well, the issue here is that Dustin has been missing land drops, so his hand's all action.
Sure.
If he was maybe flooding out a little bit, then I agree with your assessment. But at this point, his hand's all spells, so I feel like once you don't kill the Courser, you just have to play it out like this.
It is all spells because, as you mentioned, he's not playing any lands, but we don't know what the spells are, right? If you're in Brian's spot, like you don't know you know that his hand's all action, but you don't know which spells he actually has. You can draw the conclusion that yes, you have all spells in your hand. Because now he's going to create, like he's Creator's Claw, he's got a Creator's Claw Tasker now because Dustin doesn't have much of a board, right?
Yeah, I guess also with Dustin having drawn the Whip of Erebos several turns earlier, that Brian just has to contain the board. But yeah, I guess
because he's got 2 blockers back on defense that Dustin can't attack through.
right. There's been several turns now of kind of inconsistent plays from Brian.
That I 100% agree with. Not killing the Courser was pretty strange. I was very surprised not to see him do that on that turn. Whip of Erebos is going to slide in here. We'll get a block on a Courser, of course. Dustin's going to gain some life. The big problem now here for Brian, however, is that Whip of Erebos is actually in play. And when this deck has Whip of Erebos in play, it's very hard to beat.
Particularly with Brian's hand just being a couple of removal spells that aren't great. One's a sorcery and the other one only kills small stuff. And a Stubborn Denial with basically no targets in Dustin's deck that he can counter at this stage. And Dustin aware that that card's in his hand.
Yeah. Opulent Palace is going to be found off of the Courser. You saw Satyr Wayfinder turn over a bunch of cards. None of them were lands, however. Top card of the deck for Taylor is a Swamp and a Passing of the turn. The draw this turn is a Thunderbreak Regent. Let's see what Brian wants to cast, if it will just be the Regent. It looks like it's going to be. He's going to pass the turn back, it looks like. Wild Slash, Creator's Claws, Stubborn Denial in hand. All cards that care about Ferocious. Swamp's the draw, Courser on top. But again, the big issue here now is that Whip of Erebos is in play, and boy, are there some good things to bring back from the graveyard.
Oh, yeah. The gang's all down there.
Yeah, it is. Here's Courser. There's a Swamp. Going to gain 2. We'll see an activation of the Whip. It could be Dragonlord Atarka. It can be Sidisi. It looks like it's going to be Atarka. That means there will be a trigger here.
I would let Brian choose. You tell me.
That's really nice of you, I must say.
They're all good.
You're not wrong. Here comes Big Papa Dragon. Atarka is a she, so she will be getting in the red zone. Big Mama Dragon, not happy.
Very upset with Brian right now.
Gonna deal a bunch of damage, gonna gain a bunch of life, and I think shortly here we'll be heading to a second game as Dolan is down to 5. It's just Whip of Erebos in this deck. This is the best Whip of Erebos deck, I'm pretty sure. It's just unbelievable.
Once Whip is unchecked in a long game, it is hopeless on the other side of the table.
And Brian has some cards in this matchup that are pretty poor. A card like Wild Slash is really kind of nonsense against this deck that Dustin's playing.
Yep. Brian gets to clean up some of the stuff in the sideboarding, which I believe we'll be getting to momentarily.
Yeah.
But game 1, he is not the best suited to win this kind of fight if Dustin's hand contains discard and removal. That's the one edge Brian kind of has, is if Dustin's hand's clunky, Brian can just curve out with just good big stuff before Dustin gets much going. But that Thoughtseize into Hero's Downfall is really where the game got determined.
Yep. Those early stages of the game. Dustin looking to figure out exactly what's the best way to put a close on this thing. It looks like he's going to go get Sidisi, and that's going to draw the concession. So Dustin Taylor is going to win game number 1 here over Brian Dolan. Sultai Reanimator up a game here very quickly over Teamer Aggro. And that means we're going to go to Brian Dolan's sideboard and take a look what he has access to.
4 copies of Disdainful Stroke, 3 copies of Ash Cloud Phoenix, 2 Roast, 2 Seismic Rupture, an Anger of the Gods, and Encase in Ice, a Feed the Clan, and a Plummet. So the Disdainful Strokes, probably the Ash Cloud Phoenixes, and the Anger of the Gods seem like very good cards to bring in here. I'm not sure if he wants to bring in the roast. There are some targets on the ground, but I think it's very easy for Brian to have too much removal and drag out a longer game, which he's not favored in. The one Anger of the Gods, I think, is different because it's a sweeper. It can break up a lot of stuff going on Dustin's side of the table. And the fact that it exiles is a huge boon against a deck that's playing with Delve cards and Whip of Erebos.
Other side of things for Dustin, he's got a Freak, God of Affliction, 3 Disdainful Stroke, a Treasure Cruise, 2 copies of Doomwake Giant, 2 Drown in Sorrow, 2 Ultimate Price, a Soul of Innistrad, and singletons of Reclamation Sage, Thoughtseize, Hornet Queen, and Merciless Executioner. Looks a lot like what we saw Ross play.
Yeah, and I wouldn't sideboard too heavy in this matchup on Dustin's side. The cards I'm interested in, the Hornet Queen, I think is a very solid blocker. You whip it back, and it's pretty hard for Brian to win the game from that spot, assuming your life total is high. 2 copies of Ultimate Price, great against Thunderbreak Reach and Stormbreath Dragon, a variety of threats in Brian's deck. And I think the 3 copies of Disdainful Stroke could come in as well because Brian's trying to curve into just large threats.
We'll see how both players do elect the sideboard here. We'll talk very quickly about the IQs here at Star City Games. We talked about Gerard. He's playing an IQ right now, as is Kevin Jones here, our Modern Premier IQ, that we are running here. A cool 5K, but the neat thing is, not only at Open Series, you can get it at your local store, too.
Absolutely. There's several tiers of this, going all the way up to the Premier IQs that we have here at Open Series events, but you can also host these at your store. All of these kits come with exclusive prizes like playmats, dice bags, creature collection pins, top 8 pins, SCG premium vouchers. Some of this stuff is for the top 8 competitors. Some of this is handed out to everyone who enters the event, and you can go over StarCityGames.com and get more information on this program.
You see that dragon on the playmat? And there's someone, I believe, an angel flying away. What do you think the chance of that angel is?
Not looking good.
Pretty low. Tough to watch there, really. Promoting violence on our playmats and dice bags like this.
It's a violent game.
It really can't be.
Pretty violent game.
Jeez. What's the? I know again you work in games.
Mm-hmm.
When you're making the art commission, what do you put together for that for the artist?
What do you mean exactly?
So when you're commissioning a piece of art, what do you tell the artist you want them to draw?
You sort of give them some broad strokes direction.
Okay.
But you also want to give them enough room to interpret and have their own little spin on it.
Okay.
So you're often saying, show an angel flying away from a dragon in a cavern. The dragon should be, mouth agape, fire breathing, very angry looking, and the angel looks distressed and is trying to fly away as fast as possible. You're not trying to lay out every last piece of the art piece, but you're trying to give enough direction where they have some guidance, but can still put their own creativity into it.
And then that becomes this.
Right.
Nice.
Exactly.
Very cool. Well, I like that playmat. Because that angel is going to lose to the dragon.
It looks likely. Maybe next IQ season we can have the playmat that shows the resolution of that conflict.
Perhaps the angel standing tall over the dragon.
Just a bunch of feathers in the air.
Very, very nice.
Before and after.
Yeah, chapter 2.
Chapter 2.
Really
the
good.
The dragon won.
Yeah. Game number 2 here between Dustin Taylor and Brian Dolan will be underway here in just a moment. Sultai, Reanimator, and Teamer Aggro. Teamer Aggro will be on the play.
Art description's not really my specialty. Don't do a lot.
I think I would be terrible at it. I think I would be absolutely terrible at it.
I think the things that I find funny are not things that most people find funny.
Oh, you have a different brand of humor? Maybe some of them shouldn't be on the playmat?
I'm not great at coming up with the art concepts.
Keep that in mind.
Yeah,
if we get a B playmat, just a spilled B truck.
Yeah.
I would like that. That's what I would commission.
Show a wave of bees. In the background, there should be additional bees.
A truck tipped over, the driver covered in bees. Interpret that how you may.
Yeah.
There it is. What a little master that bee is.
Yep. Just ready for combat. And if a stinger wasn't enough and wings, well, I got what appears to be a pirate's sword and a studded shield. What a just magic art back in the day was just
it's really good.
It's just so great.
It's really, really good. Brian's going to keep his opening hand. Dustin's going to take a mulligan down to 6.
There's just a lot more direction in the art nowadays in Magic. I think the objective quality of the pieces on average is a lot higher.
So do I.
And there's more of a cohesive artistic vision for what goes into the art. That said, there's some old school sentimentality of mine that sheds a tear that I look at the artwork for Legends Killer Bees and knows that that's never going to appear on a Magic card ever again.
Well, get yours while you can. That's what makes Magic great. You get to look at some of the things in the past and just go, what were they thinking?
Yeah, what is that all about?
I want to be with a sword and a shield.
Yeah. Show an especially hairy bee flying around with a sword and shield. Okay, cool.
I'll have that done for you in an hour. It's no problem whatsoever. It is truly great.
But now let's show a human being with a yellow background. Okay. Never going to see that again either.
I get paid for this? See if Dustin likes his 6 cards. Nope. Down to 5 very quickly. Okay.
Just hanging out. Just
The yellow background. The yellow background.
Show a yellow background. Human being with a yellow background.
It's really good. Bands. Part of a band.
Great.
At common.
And actually a fairly deep set of flavor text there.
Well, it has a story.
Well,
She has a story to tell.
So yeah, I am entertained. I mean, I know a lot of it is nostalgia, but I am amused by that artistic direction.
With a yellow background. That's it.
So,
Is that a sunset? Is it a sunrise?
Nope, just yellow wallpaper.
Okay.
Yellow paint in a room.
Human with a shield, ready to band up with someone. With a Timberwolf.
Yeah.
Yes.
They can attack together. You can actually have a non-bander in that band. So you can get, say, a Pearl Unicorn, and they can all attack together.
It's a tough band to stop.
Yeah. That's 4.
Dustin's on 5 cards to be exact. He's going to keep his 5. Brian Dolan's going to start things off with the Temple of Abandon. Top card goes to the bottom. We're heading Taylor's way. Mana Confluence is a painful way to start things. And Brian with a Forest and a carry added. We'll see what he can ramp into. Taylor will draw. It's a polluted Delta. That's land number 2. He'll sacrifice that. Islander Swamp on the way here for Dustin.
But this game, even with Dustin on 5 cards, is still much the same story. Whereas if he's able to blunt the early pressure that Brian can put together, a lot of Brian's tools get a lot less effective as a result. His burn spells, he can't really leverage the initial pressure. His counter spells are less effective tools. It's harder to do on 5 cards, but Dustin's still probably okay as long as he can find enough discard spells and removal to keep Brian off of his powerful early game action.
Well, at least he's got some lands. Opulent Palace is what he found off Satyr Wayfinder. Courser, another Wayfinder. Murderous Cut going to the graveyard. Let's see what this is. It's an Ash Cloud Phoenix. That's a tough one.
And there's the first test.
Yeah. Opulent Palace to draw for Taylor this turn, so he does have lands number 3 and 4, even though they enter the battlefield tapped. Satyr Wayfinder going to come into the red zone, sneak on in. Ash Cloud Phoenix, no interest in blocking. Opulent Palace enters the battlefield tapped. We head back Brian Dolan's way. He's going to come across for 4 in the air. Taylor's going to go down to 14.
Getting to untap with a big creature in play, so important for Brian. And really makes the counter spells that he has, Stubborn Denial and the Disdainful Strokes in the sideboard, that much more powerful.
Courser of Crufix reveals Forest. That'll enter the battlefield. Top card of the deck is a Savage Knuckle Blade. Taylor draws a copy of Llanowar Waste for the turn. Here's 3 mana. Maybe we'll see a Courser on Dustin's side. We will. Top card. Cut. Opulent Palace enters the battlefield. Trigger the Courser. Gain a life.
So Murderous Cut's pretty big there, I think. You know, Dustin can probably sniff out the Disdainful Stroke. It's at least a card on the radar. Murderous Cut allows him to both play 2 spells in 1 turn and overwhelm a Disdainful Stroke if it's there.
Courser of Crufix, the card on top here for Dolan. Knuckleblade was the draw, of course.
Now, he's only got 1 blue source of mana. So if Brian casts the Knuckleblade, that means the shields are down on Disdainful Stroke. And if the shields are down on Disdainful Stroke, Dustin might have a turn of play a good 4-mana card and Murderous Cut one of your plays. And that's some trouble for Brian. So he may have held off on the Knuckleblade this turn out of fear for that Murderous Cut and another play that Dustin might be able to generate.
At airings.starcitygames.com.
CDC, the top card of the deck. Now Murderous Cut was the draw.
Please check your pairings and find your...
And part of the problem now on Brian's side of the table is Dustin's aware that he drew Knuckle Blade and elected not to play it. So there's got to be some blue card that's causing that to be the case.
Yep.
So negate, disdainful stroke, stubborn denial, something.
Well, here's CDC. I think that's going to get stroked. Yep.
Yeah, Brian just kind of needs to free up the blue mana in his hand, if nothing else. I don't think Sidisi is the ideal card for him to disable stroke because he has an Anger of the Gods in his hand, but he just needs to cast it on something so he can deploy the Knuckle Blade and keep advancing his board.
Of course, you're going to gain a life here. Taylor will pass the turn back. Dolan will draw his Courser. Top card of the deck is a Mountain. Another Courser. Mountain, trigger, gain some life, Stubborn Denial on top of the deck.
But you're starting to feel that even with Dustin having mulligan to 5, things are kind of turning around in Dustin's favor.
Yep.
I mean, Dustin is low, and Brian might be able to squeeze out this game before Dustin has the opportunity to deploy all the cards in his hand, but it's getting worse for Brian.
Knuckle Blade coming in the red zone now too, along with the Courser and the Ash Cloud Phoenix.
Ash Cloud Phoenix is definitely problematic for Dustin in this spot, though, because Brian has enough mana to unmorph it, and Dustin's in the spot where he's kind of locking up the ground, using his removal spells, and Ash Cloud Phoenix unmorphing and triggering over and over again may just not be something Dustin can get out from under.
Ash Cloud Phoenix plays this weird role in Standard where sometimes it's really good, other times it's pretty poor. But the times where it's good and the matchups it's good, it's really good.
Well, it's kind of perfect for this sort of matchup because Dustin's packing a lot of removal. Brian's the aggressive deck, but the nature of Brian's deck allows him to get to a lot of mana. A lot of the aggressive decks that have Ash Cloud Phoenix just don't have that much mana in the deck, so they kill it, and then they kill it again, and life kind of goes on. For Brian here, it's possible that this kind of just jams up Dustin too badly.
Llanowar Waste looks like it's going to enter the battlefield, and it will, so Taylor's going to go up to 6 so long as he remembers his Courser trigger. We'll see the next card here in just a moment. So Dustin has a Forest on top of his deck.
Please join me in congratulating the judge program's
See if he can beat this Ash Cloud Phoenix.
Viva Oracle from New York.
It's getting to a spot where even if Dustin locks up the air with something like Hornet Queen, it's going to be too hard to get around this. Dustin's hand with no shortage of power here. He's got a DC and then a Dragon Lord Atarka.
If he can cast him.
Well, next turn he can get to Dragon Lord Atarka,
Yeah.
but again,
He's
that's not going to be.
He's going to try to figure out how he can hold on and get there.
Yeah, it's not, and also beat the Unmorph trigger as well.
Yeah.
It's asking a lot.
This is definitely a tough spot.
Dustin has all the tools, he just might not have enough time to deploy all of them. And the Stubborn Denial that Brian is drawing cuts off a lot of the cards that Dustin would theoretically want to tutor for, because he needs a spell to handle the Ash Cloud Phoenix. A creature's not going to do it. So he kind of needs to do whatever he's going to do now, and that's too much mana. You know, he has to pay 5 for Sidisi, and then whatever he has left over is not going to be enough to handle the Ash Cloud Phoenix.
It looks like he's coming to a conclusion here. There's Sidisi. Trigger. He'll exploit. Time to go searching. Feels like a Murderous Cut.
I don't think it can. I don't know if it can be
Shorter
Murderous
card.
Cut. It may have to be. I was thinking it may have to be Whip of Erebos just to give Dustin the cushion to gain some life here. Yeah, it's rough, but he can't get. I don't feel like he can get a creature in this spot because he doesn't have enough time.
Also, the best creature he can get is already in his hand, probably, in Dragonlord Tarka.
Yeah.
Dragonlord Silumgar is interesting.
Okay, that's a way to get out from
That's
under
an
this.
interesting spot.
If this card sticks, that's a way to beat the Ash Cloud Phoenix.
That's what he's going to get. Okay.
That makes sense. That's his one path here.
He knows what the opponent's drawing.
Yep.
Summer Denial. He can't worry about what's in the opponent's hand.
Can't beat it anyway.
Can't beat any of the stuff there.
If you assume that Brian's hand is lands, and the Summer Denial is drawing, this is the best that Dustin can do.
Yep. Force on top is pretty nice.
And he would like a land both to gain life and not have to tap his Mana Confluence in the event that he casts one of his 6-mana spells.
Top card's Courser. I think Dustin has done a really nice job of just assessing the situation.
Yep.
Here comes Ash Cloud.
There's no guarantee Dustin wins this game,
Not at all.
but he is doing what he can to give himself the best shot.
And Brian's hand is garbage.
Yeah, it's an anger that is no good. A Stubborn Denial that Dustin's aware of, and Dustin's plan at this point is basically just all spells. And another land with a Courser on top.
Polluted Delta. Trigger up to 3.
Brian is likely to shuffle away that Courser because that's no help.
Yes. See how Dustin wants to tap his mana to cast a Dragonlord here. Does he want to sacrifice the Polluted Delta or use the Mana Confluence? It seems like with Murderous Cut on top of your deck, you probably want to draw that.
Yeah, the Polluted Delta just gives him a lot more flexibility down the line too. So, yeah, Murderous Cut I think is too good of a draw step to give up at this point.
I think if you're Dustin, it's not reasonable to concern yourself with Wild Slash, like dying to that right now.
It's probably been removed from the deck.
Yeah.
And Dustin does not have the wiggle room to play around anything. It looks like he is going to be shuffling here. He doesn't have the wiggle room to play around that kind of stuff. He's just got to cast what he can cast and hope it's good enough.
A little bit of brute force.
Yep. If Brian could have killed him last turn, he would have killed him. So he probably can't do anything about this.
He's taking that Ash Cloud Phoenix with Dragonlord Silumgar. Top card of the deck is Forest. Taylor's already played his land for the turn. And Dustin's put himself in the best spot he can.
Yep. He's still, Brian's at 25 now, going to 26. It's going to be hard for Dustin to win this game quickly, to say the very least. And Brian is drawing very live, but
A lot of Crater Claws available, for example.
He found his one path to deal with the Ash Cloud Phoenix. He now has a pretty substantial clock coming on the way back. He's still got cards in his hand, including Dragonlord of Tarka.
So he can close the game out pretty quick.
I would be 2 turns seems ambitious, but maybe 3 you can get this done. And you just got to hope to hold on for those couple turns there.
Thunderbreak Regent. He's okay against that. That's the draw for the turn. Disdainful Strokes on top.
Fine with that too.
Yep. There's Thunderbreak Regent. You're not targeting that ever. You have a 3/5 in play, so you've got that checked. Dustin will draw that Forest. Take a look at that top card. There's a Polluted Delta. That's going to enter the battlefield. Taylor's going to go up to 4. See the next card. Carry at it. He's going to slow down just a little bit.
Yeah, you can see Dustin almost considered playing one of the Force out of his hand because he doesn't really want these lands to deal damage to him. But at this point, it's not clear what the damage is between 3 and 4. Maybe there's Lightning Strikes in Brian's deck at this point, but
There's 4 mana. This might be Sidisi.
Sidisi seems fine here. You guarantee have a creature on top of the deck. You want to pass through that draw anyway.
Carry at it is 1. Opulent Palace is 2. Opulent Palace is 3. Zombie coming. I want to see the top card of the deck now from Courser. Murderous Cut. Sidisi Undead Vizier are going to come to the red zone. See anything else will. It looks like he's just going to hold steady. 4 damage to be dealt. No real good blocks on that thing, given Death Touch. Taylor will pass the turn back. It's so important for Dustin to try to get this game over with, though. He's got to add to the board, get the clock going. Because Sidisi is fine on that turn. It's fine. I want to get Dragon Lord or Tark on the battlefield in some fashion. Brian's gonna fail to find off of this fetch land, as you can see. He's just shuffling.
Well, Sidisi does add the same amount of power that turn. If you feel like you're not going to be attacking with Dragon Lord or Tarka, next turn, were you to cast it. Ugh.
There's an Ash Cloud Phoenix.
Although Dustin has given himself a little bit of a cushion here.
Yep.
With this Corsair Crew Fix, so it's not as dire as it was the last time this card showed up. And Dustin's got some lands in his hand too, so he can keep clawing his life total up. He's not facing exactly lethal from Ash Cloud Phoenix.
Does he want to draw the Murderous Cut? Looks like the answer is yes.
I think Murderous Cut is good enough to draw here, and the other factor is I don't think Dustin wants to take that damage if he can avoid it.
Okay.
I guess it's net neutral, but he could potentially draw another Corsair Crew Fix
Then it can
and
be
actually
positive.
make the delta net positive.
Sidisi.
And that Whip of Erebos on Dustin's deck now means that Brian is in a lot of trouble because he shuffled away a Disdainful Stroke. I don't think he has any protection against this.
Dustin has to be thrilled with that block. He's going to go up to 5. He gets to play Dragon Lord or Tarka now. Kill Ash Cloud Phoenix. Deal some damage elsewhere.
And the big thing is he knows what Brian's drawing next turn. There's no Wooded Foothills in play, nothing to shuffle. And if Brian has no recourse to the Whip of Erebos, forget about it. That swing's going to undo everything Brian did up until this point.
He'll do 2 there. And who cares where else? Just not Thunderbreak region. How about that? Doesn't matter where else you deal. Deal all 5 to that thing. Who cares? Dragon Lord or Tarka is now on the battlefield. Dolan with Stubborn Isle and Anger of the Gods in hand. And Stubborn Isle is going to be the draw step. Denial's a draw. Foothills on top. Now, even though things are getting really ugly here, Dolan's going to play a land. I was going to say he might have 1 turn to get to draw Creator's Clause, but that might be out the window now.
I think this is going to be too much life gain. And I also think that Brian may have to consider just attacking with everything. He's got this Anger of the Gods in his hand still, and you can't take it with you.
Yep.
So you have some hope that Dustin just screws up the block somehow. Maybe Dragon Lord or Tarka gets involved. You get to remove that. But I don't think you can just say go here because Dustin's going to untap, play this whip, and attack you with a bunch of stuff. And
No, fortunately, Stubborn Isle does counter target non-creature spell.
okay,
So
excuse me.
it's not all lost at this point for Brian. It's not instant or sorcery, it's non-creature spell, so it can counter the whip. Disdainful Stroke on top of the deck.
Then Brian can hold off for a little bit longer.
So you can try to keep playing towards Creator's Clause. But Dustin needs to try to keep continuing to do this, which is shorten this game. Disdainful Stroke will be a decent draw for Dustin. Looks like Corsair's going to block. And Brian's going to take 8, go to 15. All Dustin can do is pass. I think Brian's going to sacrifice. Yep.
And if Brian's willing to give up on Whisperwood Elemental here, that's to me an indicator that he knows it's now or never on Creator's Clause.
And it's Fireball.
Yeah. Because Whisperwood Elemental is a really juicy draw if you think you can still win the game kind of conventionally. If he doesn't feel that's the case anymore, then he's on Creator's Clause or bust.
I think this is him loudly saying he doesn't think he can win it conventionally.
And I agree with him. I don't think that Whisperwood Elemental does much in this spot. Dustin's board's just overwhelming.
Shuffle it real good. Top card. Nope. Whisperwood Elemental. Brian, that's your draw. What's your next card, my friend? Yep.
Okay.
That's a gooder. Ish. So now now Brian has to do this weird math of if he can play Whisperwood Elemental, because if he plays it, he has to manifest the Creator's Clause. he needs to draw that card next turn. So now Brian Dolan has to say, okay, well, do I have enough creatures that can block to not die? Is the question. And Dustin can do this really weird thing where he can put him to the test and say, I'm going to cast my with Erebos. You have no blue mana in play. You have to counter it with your Sylvan Caryatid. That's one less blocker.
Yeah, Dustin may be able to just kind of like push through lethal.
Yep.
Because Brian does have to commit.
Okay, there's Murderous Cut too that he's had for a little while. There's Stubborn Denial. But I think that's fine with Dustin because now he gets to untap and he gets to play Whip.
Yeah, I think that Dustin Brian rather just had to let that go.
Yeah.
Because that was the only thing preventing Whip of Erebos from getting into play.
Perhaps Brian got a little bit of tunnel vision there because what it looks like there, as far as his mana is concerned, there's no blue lands out there, no Temple of Mystery, no Temple of Epiphany, no Frontier Bivouac, so there's Whip of Erebos, and that is going to get the job done. Dustin Taylor is going to win this game and match over Brian Dolan 2-0. Dustin Taylor is moving on to our elimination matches.
Congrats to him. Battle back from a tough mulligan to 5 there, but I do feel like as long as he's able to kind of thwart the early pressure, eventually his deck gets to do its thing against Teamer, and once his deck is doing his thing, there's no real recourse from the other side of the table unless Brian's able to kind of punk him out with something like Crater's Claws. And he had a couple turns there where he could have drawn it and pulled it off, but